Well, hello, welcome back to my channel. It's summertime here where I am in Arkansas, and it is hot outside and it's really humid. And it's hard to force yourself to go outside and take photos sometimes. But today I thought we'd really get on a subject that, depending on whether you're a beginner or you're experienced, it can be really irritating sometimes for us experienced photographers. Is people always bombard us with questions about settings. And I want you to understand straight up right now, there are no magic settings. There are no magic settings for a wedding. There's no magic settings for just walking around the park, taking portraits. There are no magic settings. Forget it. You have to develop these settings yourself for your camera, your lenses, your situation, the light. Remember, just walking a few feet from one spot to the next can totally change your settings, especially if you're outside, going in and out of the sunlight, going in and out of shadow and things. There is no such thing as a magic setting. Now, there are things that you can do, and we'll talk about it in this video a little bit, to help. Now, I love on-location portraiture, and that's one kind of thing on its own. Now, when I'm outside shooting portraits, 90% of my shots I'm using a flash of some kind. But I have my camera set so I see some environment. If you go out on location and you're not exchanging some of your environment with your subject, why go on location? Just stay in a studio and shoot. But when I go out on location, I like nice, crisp, clear pictures of my subject, and I like to have my aperture and my background. I like to have something set so it tells a little bit of a story. So, if she's standing in a hallway, you can look down that hallway and just kind of watch it fade out, because the way you got your aperture and your bokeh and your background, all that stuff is working together. Now, typically, if I'm shooting one model, I'll give you a couple examples here. If I'm shooting one model, 90% of the time, I'm shooting at f4, and that gives me enough background blur to isolate my subject, but it also lets you be part of the environment. Now, if I'm shooting during those sessions when I'm doing those uptight, really close, photos, the classic portraiture aspect of that shoot. I'm shooting 1.8, 2.8. I'm trying to make sure I really isolate her and blow out the background. But most of the time you're just walking around, in the environment. You're under trees, you're on a sidewalk, you're going in and out of structure. Just shoot f4, and then my flash, depending on how far away I am from her or him, must be equal. I'll adjust my flash. I like to shoot. Here's another setting. Start out with your lowest, like on my Yongnuo flash, 1/128 power is where I usually start, and I may go up, be half power, even full power, depending on how dark it is. But usually you start with the lower settings and get that natural look. Never, never, never try to blow out your subject. If it's too bright, you're going to know immediately. You want the flash to fill in and make it all look natural. She's standing under a tree and you shoot an ambient photo and you can tell it's a little dark, well, turn that flash on and poof, lighten it up just a little bit. That's why I shoot flash, is just to give those times. I want my model to look as good as she can. I want it to look natural. I don't want her, if she's standing in the shade, I don't want her darker than the background and things like that. So that's portraits. If I'm out walking around the park, which when I was in China especially, every time I didn't have a class, every morning, afternoon, whenever it was, I was out shooting. And on my walkabouts, I usually have a camera like here. I got this is my Nikon. This is my D5600. I love this little camera for walking around. It just feels really great, and it's got the touch screen and everything. Just a beautiful, beautiful, easy to use camera. Usually I take a little bag, my zoom lens like this right here. This is a 70 to 30. This is the full frame. This is the AFS VRED blah 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 lens. It's about $500 lens. I like to shoot good glass, and I usually have a 55 to 300 or the 70 to 300. Depending on where I was going, if I knew I might see some action, the 70 to 300 focuses a lot faster than the 55 to 300. Then usually I have my zoom lens. I either have a prime like my 35 or my 50 millimeter, or I'd have my Sigma 17 to 50. So I can shoot wide. I can shoot that 50 millimeter shot, and because that lens is a 2.8 lens, if I bump into some people, or if I get into really, really low light, if I bump into some people, they might want me to take some pictures of them or whatnot, or we're trading photos, and I can get that pretty portraiture shot. If I get into some low light, I can shoot a lot better picture at lower ISO than you can with your kit lens. So a Sigma 17 to 50 is really good, or a prime. The 18 to 55 lenses they're kit lens, and they're usually pretty poor in any kind of low light. In normal light, they're fine, good and sharp, nice, they're okay. But I'll be walking around, say I got out from the taxi or whatever there in China. I was ready to start walking around. Usually the first thing I do, I put it on F8, sometimes F10. And a lot of times if I went to F10, it's just because I didn't want to change my shutter speed much. I can go a couple clicks, from F8 to F10 and not do many more changes. So I like shooting at F8 a lot, and usually 1/160 shutter speed, for example, because half the time, I'm in a not overlit. I like to stay out of the sun. The colors pop better. I like days that have some cloud. If the sun is not shining directly on your subject, you usually see the colors a lot better. If the sun is shining on something, that gleam, it dulls the color. And that's another reason I shoot vivid. If you go into picture control, I shoot vivid 90% of the time. So I want my colors to pop. That's what people notice anyhow. They like to see that color. Even on my portraiture, it's all the same. I like to shoot vivid. But we're out walking around, so F8, just pick you a shutter speed, and if you walk out into the sun and you need more shutter speed, do it. But the way to do it, there's ways of controlling things, and this all this setting stuff. This is why we cannot tell you what to shoot, because we're not standing beside you. We're not pointing our camera at what you are pointing your camera at. So if you're shooting, say, in aperture priority, and you shoot, click, maybe it's a little dark. Let's see, let's look here. Let's find a photo I'll show you. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Alright, I'll tell you this shot I took a couple days ago. If you look here, I am underexposed according to this picture. And I was shooting this one at f10, ISO 360. Ideally, on this histogram, you can look real quick, and if you're going toward the middle, you're going closer to that perfect exposure, or what the camera says is a perfect exposure. I like to shoot a little bit underexposed. So snap, take a picture, look at your histogram, guys. Histogram will save your bacon out shooting. Because a lot of times it's really hard to take a picture and you look, you know, when you're doing like this, you know, because it's hard to see your LCD. So look at that histogram. Always have it activated, and you can tell a little bit about how you're shooting, and you can adjust your shutter speed and whatnot according to that. So there is a lot. If it was, folks, if photography was easy, everybody would be a photographer. Okay? It's just too much fun. But you got to put in the time. You got to learn how to do these things. And I love just walking around taking pictures of the flowers and all that. But when you look, you know, the reason I say if you're an aperture priority, you can take your exposure compensation and go up or down a little bit. Now, exposure brightens or darkens the entire picture, but you can do that a little bit and it's fine. It's just fine. But for me, when I'm outside, especially on these days when we got a little bit more sun than I like, go into manual. You can leave auto ISO. Tons and tons of people leave auto ISO, especially outside. Wildlife photographers, it's just, there's so much to worry about. You worry about aperture and shutter speed. But what you do in manual mode, you can look and you see that little bar at the bottom and you can see if it's to the right or to the left, and you can do a real quick adjustment and get a good exposure. I love manual mode. You look and meter at your subject and set it. But remember, you might point down at a flower and you got to do a quick change, or if you shoot up at something, you got to make another quick change. You can be standing in the same place and your settings are going to change. That's why we cannot tell you there is a magic setting for anything. Weddings, you know, the light varies greatly, and you just gotta look and do it. It's up to you. But I hope. Oh, real fast, before we go, excuse me. If you are shooting under trees on a sunny day, that can be a nightmare. So a lot of you know a nightmare on your camera. Your camera doesn't know what you're shooting at, and you might take that picture and it be perfect. But oftentimes when you're under those trees, maybe you're shooting down a little walkway or something under trees, you know, some pretty little setting. You click and that point, it's dark. It's really, really, really dark. It's really, really hard on your camera a lot of times to make those kind of shots. If you're a Nikon shooter, the first thing you might do before you start messing with ISO is go into the shooting menu and tap that active D. The active D, as far as I know, Nikon's the only one that has active D. And you might put your active D up on the high setting maybe and take another picture and see how much it improved. Do that before you start messing with your ISO, because that combination, you might still be able to keep a low ISO in that active D and get the perfect shot. So pump that active D up, then maybe you have to go to ISO 400 instead of before. You might have to go over 1,000 to get the shot you want. So there are some little tricks with Nikon that you can learn and get a better shot. That active D helps bring out more detail, and it usually lightens the picture up a little bit. Not a little bit. Sometimes it can be quite a bit, but usually it's subtle. But sometimes subtle is all you need. Then that little bump with your ISO, and you get that perfect exposure. So remember that next time you're out with your Nikon, is see what you get. Okay. Anyhow, have a great day, and be thinking about your settings, and write down what makes your good pictures. When you go to edit, look at those good pictures and write that information down, and remember that next time you walk outside. Anyhow, have a great day and go out and take some pictures. I know it's hot, but go out and take some pictures. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.